When Bob called me about Back to the Future 3, the beginning of the phone call was, Al, we're going to get to do our Western. And when he called me about What Lies Beneath, he said, Al, we're going to get to do our Hitchcock.
I got a call from Nina Jacobson, whom I had done a script for, a horror script at Universal. And she had just become a development executive at a very new company, very exciting. It was a partnership between Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen. DreamWorks, it was called. Nina said, would you be interested in a ghost story? I said, yeah, did you happen to know that I once had a ghost in the house? And she said, no, I'm going to run down the hall right now and tell Steven because he's going to be so jealous. He always had kind of a Jones for the paranormal and the extraterrestrial, and his dream was to have an actual experience of the things that he was forced to simply imagine. So I turned in the script and they all loved it, but it wasn't scary, and I knew that while I was writing it. So the second draft, I put in more scares. I added a Ouija board, and I added, the stirring of the bathtub. I did have her as a musician, so all of these things remained in the story when it was eventually made as something else. But it simply wasn't scary enough for him. I had another movie to go to, which I actually was slated to direct. And I said, guys, quickly tell me what you want, because I got to go. And they said, you know what, just go, because we don't know what we want. After that, of course, they left it, they saw other writers.
And I said, oh boy, okay, let me think about that. And I had just finished directing one of Mamet's plays in New York. And I was driving back out to LA to try to get out of debt from directing a play. And about by Nebraska, I felt like I had an idea.
I asked for a copy of the script, and I saw how very different it was. So, I immediately said Clark should have sole credit on this, and I'll take the story credit. I do wish they had told me that they wanted to go erotic with it, because that's another specialty of mine, since I had written 9.5 weeks.
Well, I always find it interesting to read a script and kind of in your own mind, see characters. And then the movie gets cast, and you see what they bring.
Casting, of course, is key to movie making, key to directing. I mean, I'm a believer in that expression that good directing is good writing and good casting.
Well, surprisingly, I think the greatest thing that Harrison brought to the role was the fact that he was cast against type.
I remember a conversation with Bob where we were trying to figure, it was to the point where he was starting to think about who the actors would be. And I know that we both agreed that it had to be someone that had not done that kind of role before. And that it should be someone you just could not imagine.
Because if we had somebody that you would suspect was the bad guy, you're kind of blowing the surprise of the movie if people are onto it too early.
I came up with the idea of suggesting Harrison for the part and sent him the script, and he read the script and said, yes, I'd like to do this. And I thought that was a really great career move for him.
It's interesting because it's not the first movie we started photography on.
That movie was done in the middle of two halves of Castaway.
I remember standing in the lobby of a theater and Katzenberg coming up to me, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and said, so Steve, what are you guys going to do? Because we had already decided we were going to do Castaway and What Lies Beneath as the next two films. And he said, what are you going to do during that hiatus on Castaway? I think you guys should shoot What Lies Beneath. What, are you going to just sit around and just wait for Tom? And that's when the first time that I heard this notion of shooting straight through. And then I talked with Bob and said, my God, how do we do that?
We did the first half of Castaway.
Then we needed to take a break so that he could lose weight for the second half.
Once we wrapped Castaway, we just rolled that crew right on to What Lies Beneath, and we shot that entire movie.
And then while you're concurrently prepping the second part of that, and all the same crew is going from, and it's not like you're doing Lord of the Rings where you have the same cast and you're just going straight through, and we'll just, just keep shooting with basically the same cast in a lot of the same locations. These are totally different movies.
It made complete logical sense, because if we didn't have a movie to put the whole crew on, then taking a year off, everyone would have been scattered, and it would have been almost impossible to bring the entire creative team back to finish Castaway.
I don't think a day went by where we weren't working on both movies. So inevitably, we're focused on the one we're shooting first, but we're always talking about the prep of the next one.
For me, of course, I was very much all over the place, because between those two movies in Fiji and Moscow and Marfa, Texas and LA and Atlanta, now I'm adding into it,
I said what we should do is use the stage that is actually not really a stage. It was the where the Hercules, the Spruce Goose, was built. It's a big, giant, long stage. It has an opening at one end, an opening at the other end. And always what's difficult on a stage is getting up to speed and slowing up before. And so you don't have very much travel to go through. And I said, well, if we open up both doors and put like little baffles there so that we don't let out the smoke and smoked up the stage, we can shoot this shot. And it was met with a lot of like, I don't know about that. That doesn't seem right. It's like, no, because then the camera could go up to speed, and the camera car, the truck and the camera car go up to speed, and then it's entering at speed. So you have your maximum throw in smoke, and then it exits. It doesn't have to slow up to exit and goes out the door. And so Rick Carter made 2 plaques. And one of them I still have is one that was the Rob Legato Memorial plaque and the commemorative one. And if it worked, I would get the commemorative one. If it didn't work, it'd be the memorial one. And so I actually have it here because it's a kind of a favorite little prop from a movie. But that's the kind of thing where they did it, but they were not too sure about how it's going to work. And then everybody seemed to like it once we saw dailies. It was like, yeah, that's the only way to do this shot.
And 5 movies with Michelle, and What Lies Beneath was our 3rd one. So Bob was always, when we first started working together, he's a little bit more used to having everything in front of him. And, Michelle is a little bit more, she likes to kind of ease into things and figure out what it's going to be when she's sort of in the moment a little bit.
She basically said, I'm not sure what I'm going to wear to open a scene until the morning of the scene. And I thought, okay, that's fine with me. And she said, I always start with my shoes. And I said, okay, whatever your process is, that works for me.
It's like if I get her into a pair of shoes she likes, pretty much everything else is like, she's a very ground up kind of person, which is interesting because, so much of movie making, and particularly now, it's all about what's in the close-up or the medium shot. Not so much in this film because this is a really cinematic movie, but she does like to be able to have that freedom, but the thing is that I had such a strong, I had a real good idea about what I was doing in terms of the color. Like I had a real good thing in my mind plotted out. So then I was able to give her this much, and then we were able to work within that range, because I knew that where I wanted to start, and how I wanted to move through it. So within that, she was able to kind of have her flexibility and her
team. They were the ones who built sort of the puppets that we used for the morphing into different levels of decay as we were coming to the climax of the movie.
There was a replica of Amber Valletta that was more lifelike, but still a ghost image that was sort of blue and had the
one for the bathtub.
Yeah, had intrinsic veins, and she still looked beautiful, but she looked like a ghost. It had hair, it had eyes and teeth, and it was just a bust. That was made of silicone, a silicone material, so it's translucent. So we agreed on a hue of fleshy blue, and then did a layer of her skin, and then painted in reverse inside the negative of the mold, the vein work and the shadowing, so that it was all, when you pull it out of the mold, it's all under the skin. It's actually
we did paint, we did thread, we did yarn, we did all kinds of tricks.
But it wasn't
there.
Surface painting, which looks like what it is. So when you light it, it looks like there's a depth to it, and it looked really quite stunning.
Job. It was scary how perfect it was, from hair color to eye color to to nose shape, everything.
I do remember where she saw her dead self for the first time and kind of was taken aback by it.
I have photos of me with her, posing next to her and like pretending I was in full makeup as well. So I was like next to her doing the same positioning. I mean, it's a trip, they were full life-size body doubles of me in various stages of decomposition. So it was definitely a little eerie.
Especially the severe corpse. And I remember her saying like, ew, is that what I would look like if I was really dead and drowned? And of course, Jason said yes. We tried painting a makeup on Amber for reflection shots in the mirror and things. And I don't remember how successful that was. I think it was a very pale makeup with veins, and she was standing with wet hair. And there was a couple shots where it was a body makeup.
It also gave me that sense when I looked in the mirror and I sat for 4 hours being painted to look dead, basically, that I was in another dimension of Madison.
But the big event that we made was when, at the end of the film, her corpse comes out of the sunken car, and that was
that was a full puppet. We started with the early days of scanning, and we scanned Amber Valletta's body.
I had to go to the special effects house and work with those guys that were just awesome.
First have to, scan her to get all the pieces that we needed to make the physical object, which is the puppet, and then make the identical version of that in CG to be able to blend between the two of them whenever we needed to.
Then we had this perfect model figure that I had to go in and carve. It's milled out of a rigid foam that you can carve into. So then I would go and carve it and like make it all bony, and all the skin will get sluffy and translucent, and we molded it and we created like a silicone puppet basically that we could puppeteer from underwater.
We shot it and did multiple versions. One, it really happened. Then we had the big stage at MGM, or it used to be MGM, is where Esther Williams had the swimming pool, the deep swimming pool, and we staged a lot of things in there.
It was a big tank that's about 10 feet deep, and there's a section in the center like an additional 25 feet.
Yeah.
And that's where that Mustang was.
I had not watched a ton of scary movies before this because I have a very visceral reaction to film. That's probably why I love it so much. I just get the living daylights scared out of me, and I've walked out of really cheesy, scary movies just because, okay, that's the devil, and I'm not here for that. So, I mean, I had written the thing. I'd worked on it for a couple of years, and I watched the premiere. I think I'd seen an earlier screening before a lot of the music cues were in, and it scared the living daylights out of me about 6-7 times. And I thought, this is crazy. I should really see this coming.
And that's what Alfred Hitchcock did so well, is he made it for the audience to react to. And whether Bob knew how to do that instinctually or followed the Alfred Hitchcock rules or whatever, but the literally people jumping out of their seat, like, I'm not joking. I mean, that was like, they did that. People I never knew grabbed my arm and clutched on. It was like, this is crazy.
It was meant to be scary, but it wasn't a horror movie. It wasn't a lot of graphic. And I think it was magnificent how Bob, combined all of the elements to achieve that. He made a really powerful psychological thriller.
When I first got to sit in the audience and see the film for the first time, it was a lot of pleasure for me because I adore horror movies, and this one was a cut above most.
And it has stuck around. I get a lot of people. It's a movie that I think this speaks to the caliber of Bob's work and the people involved. If anything, it's kind of gained a little stature over the years. It's really fun to watch it be something that people still appreciate.
In retrospect, looking at the movie now, it's one of my favorite movies, and it's one of my wife and my daughter's favorite movies.
You work on big films, and we have no control if they're good or not. And most of the time they didn't come out that great. Even though I was proud of my work, this one actually came out and was a great film.
It was an amazing group of artists that we're all friends as well. It's like you work with your friends, and I have very nostalgic feeling for it. And it did turn out well, which helps. You know, good reviews don't hurt.
It was a really beautiful artistic achievement as a film. That is what thrills me about doing this work. Being able to, work with a designer like Rick Carter, a cinematographer, and certainly to work with Bob Zemeckis, who is, I think, one of our best directors. There's no one better, really.
What it means to me is like a sense of accomplishment that we could make an old-fashioned movie with new tools to feel like an old-fashioned movie and to make it even more seamless than Alfred Hitchcock.
I think it stands tall in its in the genre itself, and perhaps I think probably one of the best that's ever been made in that genre.
It means a lot to me to know that we could step into that world and come out with such a fine film.
And I think we've achieved all of that with What Lies Beneath.
What Lies Beneath means to me just I think a really well-made movie in the Bob Zemeckis library of films, and it's one that I'm really proud of and one that I think everyone enjoys.
People still bring up What Lies Beneath, and every once in a while I'll do this thing, and I know I'm not the only one, and that's why I'm telling the story, is all right, like on the bathroom glass, like in the shower, and like that's something that people have told me over the years. They'll be like, or she knows, or that's sort of like an inside joke, but it's one of the things that I kind of like to mess with people and play with, is that line that she sees in the mirror,